All right, y'all. So I'm jumping on the Young Thug train with everybody else because I have a little bit that I want to talk about. I actually have a few things I want to discuss, but before we get into it, I have to say thank you to everybody that stopped by, that watches the videos, likes the video, subscribes to my channel. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. As always, I have to make sure that you know that I love you. All right. So jumping from there, pardon that I look a little nuts. Came from the gym. Yeah, no, I don't. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm trying my best to do a lot of things all at once. So forgive me while I am working through all of this stuff, but hopefully the content is good enough to keep you engaged and keep you seated. So let's jump into Young Thug. Now, with this whole thing coming out with the jail calls and so on, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading notes from my iPad. Um, the calls, all of this unpacking about what he was talking about and what's happening in jail. So at first I was very much empathetic, and I still to some degree am empathetic to the fact that he was locked up, he was going through things, and he was pillow talking with his shorty and whatnot, and it's all of this stuff being unpacked. Like, I'm gonna keep it real. I would never want people to realize or know what me and my sister be talking about, right? Like, I would never want like my intimate conversations with folks to just be unpacked in front of all of these people, much less in front of them and all of those people, right? So I empathize with that space, and I think that this is a little bit crazy. But the intimate conversations that we are seeing and uh, getting some insight on makes this a bit more interesting. So y'all know that I'm in school for psychology, and we are actually, I've mentioned to y'all before, in psychopathology, what we are figuring out is things like the DSM. We're talking about things called etiology and nosology. And etiology is like the origins of certain um, methods of thinking. I want to call it methods of thinking because I don't want to be exclusive to healthcare or mental health conditions only. And nosology is how it's categorized, right? So where it can end up. So people that have a tendency to be anxious, right? You can have general anxiety disorder, you could have PTSD, you could have acute anxiety disorder, that sort of thing. You can have um somebody that tends to be socially awkward. They could just very well be socially awkward, or it can have a range of symptoms, and it could be something relative to, say, autism or ADHD, or it can be related to a trauma response. It can be mania, it can be depression, and these things show up in all of these different spaces, right? So I'm learning all of this stuff, and this is how I want to approach this conversation. But at the same time, because I'm also a big sister, and I think that if this were me having a conversation with my brothers, like, this is kind of like what it would look like, right? So bear with me a little bit while we unpack and we go through all of this stuff. So first things first, we had a conversation beforehand about trauma and grief, right? So there's a lot of things that Young Thug has talked about, because since the calls have come out, he's gone ahead and done a podcast. It's 3 hours. I've seen a few clips. I have not watched it in its entirety. I've considered it, but I genuinely can't sit here and tell you that I have 3 hours to sit still and go through that stuff, because school is not playing with me right now, and work is also busy. So, not too sure when I'm gonna have an opportunity to do it, but I can see myself getting into it because I like to get perspective and I like to hear people talk about certain things. But all of that to say, he's talked about a series of things that happens, and one of the things that he talked about that I was particularly interested in is the notion of being rejected and feeling a sense of rejection growing up in his household and so on. Sorry, because he grew up in a large family not having enough. The young man said something like his brother got killed in front of him, and essentially for his 10th birthday, he celebrated his 10th birthday at his brother's funeral, right? And so again, empathizing with the space of like, yo, that's a tough life, right? Like, but what do we say? You have a tough life and you go through these traumas, you go through these experiences, and what sort of person do you show up as thereafter, right? Because now you don't operate in the normal space, you have a new baseline of experience and exposure that creates a different type of thinking and approach to relationships and love, right? This is the part that I am, again, going to be open minded to, is the fact that when you grow up in a large family, so I myself grew up in a large family too. A challenge with being in a large family is that there's almost never enough to go around, right? So even if you have resources in the sense of like you have money, right? You have the means to take care of everybody and everybody can eat and all of these different things. The probability that you will also have the time to give to everybody in the same way is, it's not likely. And that's the downside or the challenge of having larger families. Now, again, when you riddle that kind of strain in a household with things like poverty or violence or lack of economic presentation. Like all of these things kind of create this difficult space for people to navigate, right? And you grow up feeling like you have to earn your keep. It becomes prominent and prevalent. Like people will really look at you in your house and be like, yo, what are you good for? And that kind of stuff stains you, right? Like it becomes a big part of who you decide to be moving forward. So you end up getting in this cycle of chasing success and chasing worthiness because, again, you grew up in a spot where you weren't seen unless you were doing something that was important, that was impressive, that added value to the space. And again, when you add things like poverty and whatnot, it makes this thing a little bit more difficult to navigate. And the children grow up and become these versions of adults that feel like I will get love and I will get relationships on the conditions of I have something to give these people. This is going to be important. And we're going to talk about that in two ways because we're going to talk about how he talked about helping people and making people millionaires. And we're also going to talk about the black tax, right? Because this is a part of where this gets really complicated. But I don't want to shift too quickly, too soon. Let's start off with this betrayal conversation that he's having. The betrayal conversation is a valuable conversation, and I respect what he is saying, but I am not going to sit here and play pretend like, I gotta call a spade a spade. Sir, you're full of it. And I'm saying it from a place of two spaces, right? You asking for something that you actually don't give. Because while you sitting here dog walking and calling Gunner a rat, what do you think Mariah is going through right now? Just out of curiosity, right? Imagine not only are you being dishonest, and she knew that you were a cheater, and I want to be fair in that space. This dynamic that she's going through, I'm going to do an entirely separate thing because I swear I had already written it up, but then the calls started coming out and I started to pivot my script, and I should have put it out because it would have just been equally valuable, but I digress. If we're going to sit here and have this conversation of betrayal, with what has happened with you and Mariah, you and Gunna is the same nigga, respectfully. Y'all the same nigga. So the same way you feel like, oh, he went ahead and he took this deal and he did this, that, and the other. And the Alfred plea, and this is another thing too. The Alfred plea, from what I understand, it's constructed that you are accepting a plea because there's enough evidence to suggest that you might be guilty of something, but you are still holding on to your innocence. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really do that stuff, but there's enough stuff here that will make this hard for me to fight. So I will take this plea and I will take ownership of the consequences, but I'm not going to take ownership of the actions that occurred. And this is where I'm like, I don't know if it's that Thug doesn't understand what's happening, if he's upset, because even down to the fact that you're home, bro, and you're still trying to make this a thing, it does not make sense to me. But again, let's not go too many places too fast, right? So if you want to ask me a question about like this whole betrayal thing, I really feel like Gunna might be more stand up than Thug is, just off the fact that he honored and respected his wishes, right? Like, yo, you in your feelings, you in your bag, Gunna just like, yo, it's what it is. He love him forever. He don't get out on the internet. He don't bash him. He don't say nothing. He's not suggestive and none of the above. He just let bro do his thing. And Thug is at a point where he's asking for grace that he's not giving, right? And I think that that's one part of it that I'm like, I really can't stand behind you with that shit because that's full on hypocrisy. You want something that you're not willing to give, and you want to be discriminate in the way that the law of honesty and integrity is applied. You want grace for when you do stuff that's wild and fucked up. But yeah, Gunna gets locked up and, he's looking at 20 some odd years in prison, and he should have just wrote it out, right? Because you did so much for him. And that's bringing me to this other point where he's talking about the fact that he made him a millionaire. He's like, yo, I made all of these people a millionaire. I did this, I did that. And I will not take away from the fact that you were a vessel for the opportunity, right? But I'm going to be clear here. Sir, you are not God in nobody's life. And I think that that's an important component of this discussion to have. But this is going back to that notion of the black tax, right? People that are aware of where you're from, people that have seen you from where you used to be to where you are now. And if they were supportive in that process of you getting to where you are going, there is an entitlement that comes from that, right? And let's go back to the fact that Thug spent a lot of his life fighting for his spot. And I hate to say it this way, but almost like relevance. Again, being from a large family, fighting for relevance is very, very normal because again, there's so many kids and it's so much uh space and time where it's just everybody needs something, you can very well get lost in the home life, right? Totally fair. Let's take it a step further with now you're in this space where you are adulting, you have friends, you have colleagues, y'all are making money together. And now, because you've done stuff and you have shown up in this space, you feel like success equals love and relationship. And more importantly, unconditional love and relationship. And I think that it's important for us to make a clear distinction between the fact that relationships and love are two different things. Absolutely, we will love unconditionally, but that will not mean that we will stay in relationships under all conditions. I don't think for a minute that Mariah, the scientist, is suddenly going to stop loving him, but is she going to be able to relationship him the same? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, right? We have plenty of people. Honestly, if I've ever loved you before, I've never stopped loving you, but that don't mean I'm fucking with you. And it's very simple. Those are two very different things. And not everybody has the capacity to compartmentalize to that extent. And that's fair, understandable, and respectable. But, however, Mr. Jeffrey, Mr. Jeffrey, you got to come down off of this perception of you are entitled to someone's loyalty to this extent. Because if we're going to look at it from that space, right, you're responsible for him being a millionaire. That means you're also responsible for him being in the situation where he was about to have his life spent in jail, right? You cannot take credit for one part of the success and not own the entirety of its failure. YSL, the brand, is Young Thugs. Talk about a big slime, right? Like, that was all you. You own that space. And there's nothing wrong with it being a caricature, right? Of what life represents to you. It's nothing wrong with you acknowledging the fact that it's not actually a game and all of these things. But whatever was going on in that space and in that time, you, my friend, were responsible for not only the people becoming millionaires, but the jail time that everybody was looking at. Let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further. I can bet money that if you were to ask everyone that ended up on trial, would you take the deal and the relationship with Doug if you knew that you would be hit with this, guaranteed, and you might be gambling your life away? People might seek a different opportunity to get where they're trying to go if they knew it would cost them that much at this juncture, right? And I think I want to even add to this point. This is why, for the people that don't realize, this is why Jay-Z cut people off when he got to a certain point. This is why every person can't go with you to every place, because where you realize that you are going and you are more visible, not everybody recognizes the risk that comes with visibility. Not everybody understands the responsibility that comes with blessings. If you are going to receive abundance, right? If you are going to be fruitful and abundant, you have to be a laborer. There is a reason that Jesus was a carpenter, because it needed to be clear that if you are blessed, you also need to be good with your hands and you need to be responsible. You need to be discerning. So if you want to lead people and you want to own that spot, and again, we see what happened. You standing on business, right? You owning the space, right? You're responsible for him and his success. So why would you not be responsible for him being in trouble? Why are you so mad at him that he went forward? Because you know that thing that they say about misery, right? Misery, it do love company, right? It does. So here's what I'll say. I'm not mad at him for going through what he's going through. I think that it's so important, right? So it's bad enough that all this time has gone by. Like, he should have gotten therapy just based on how he's described his childhood. Money and pussy is not therapy. I'm gonna say it again. Money and pussy is not therapy. Those are coping mechanisms. And this is why you motherfuckers end up doing crazy shit, like y'all be drinking, y'all be smoking, y'all be under the influence, because y'all are looking for all of these different things to cope with the reality of the things that you are not willing to face, contend with, overcome. And it's not to say that male conditioning doesn't make these things worse. Male conditioning exasperates things like trauma in the worst way. Because to be a man, and especially in something as grandiose and braggadocious as rap and hip hop, to be a man in that space, It's to be filthy, stinking rich. It's to be the person that's not getting taken advantage of. It's to be the aggressor in all things. It's to be the man of sexual prowess. It's to be the man that can conquer and control everything. And I would hope that at this point, you're taking some time to just reflect on, like, sir, yeah, you've hurt people. For every single thing, for every dollar that somebody has made from you or with you, there is a space where we are like, damn, jail? 20 something years? Bro, you on papers for 20 years. You on papers. Atlanta is waiting for you to fucking call from. You on the internet calling people rats and doing all of this stuff. It's stupid, sir. It's stupid. It's so stupid and it's so not worth it. You talking about betrayal and integrity, and out the same mouth, you talk out of both sides of your mouth in the worst way. You on the phone talking to your shorty and you say to her, yeah, this nigga Future's stupid. He get money and he busting in bitches. That same phone, that same jail cell, you talking to some other bitch that nobody knows who she is. Let me not say you don't know, because clearly you know who she is. And when you trying to have a baby, when you get out and you keying it up on the same phone that you talk to your bitch to. Sorry, Mariah's not a bitch. That's not nice. But you want Gunna's the foul one? Yeah, you're out your mind, bro. You out your mind. You're out your mind. Like, and it's the type of shit like this. I've seen dudes say this, and I'm starting to understand it more and more. He's like, yo, if a dude is not faithful to his woman, I'm not doing business with him. And I think that this is the first time that I've seen the significance of the lack of discipline to commit to one space, one thing, and be responsible for yourself and how you show up. This is the first time I'm seeing it and saying, yep, scratch a liar, find a thief. I'm like, yep, there it goes. So, sir, I'm saying with nothing but with nothing but honesty. Yeah, you gotta tighten up, blood. Real G shit. Like, you gotta tighten up. You shown up in ways that look kind of crazy. And I'm not even saying, honestly, I'm not even saying that you need to make amends with people like Future and whatnot. This is not even about just being posturing for them. This is more about like, bro, you got your whole life back. It's like, yeah, like I'm doing this by myself. I don't got my brothers with me. That's a choice. That's a choice. But more importantly, with how you moving, you think they want to run that risk of being around you again so that they could be back in some bullshit again? That's crazy to me. You got your life back. You got your life back. I mean, now it's a little tore up, but you know, I hope that this is a moment to be reflective and considerate of the fact that, sir, it might be you. It might be you. Stop counting all the times that you've been a vessel or a catalyst for something. Because again, what Josh say you're gonna have, you're gonna have. Whether you help them or not, they was gonna have the life that they was due. That's it. That's it. Nobody's trying to erase your legacy, but I promise you, you are actively doing it yourself. Tighten up, bro. I'll catch you.